Welcome to In the Envelope, a podcast from Backstage, the #1 resource for actors and talent seekers. I am your host, Jack Smart, awards editor at Backstage, and I'm here to guide you through every aspect of the entertainment industry with the help of some of your favorite stars. These intimate, inspirational conversations with today's most award-worthy film, television, and theater artists provide you, dear listener, advice on how to live the creative life, personal stories of success and failure alike, and maybe, just maybe, a tantalizing glimpse in the envelope.
You must love what you do. You must love it, and it takes over you. It's a passion. That right there is your fuel of sustainability.
Welcome, listeners, to another episode of In the Envelope. I am joined today by the one and only, I should have written like a long, elaborate intro for you. But everybody already knows who you are. Jamie Muffett, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good. I am excited to talk to you because it seems like it's been a while since our last voiceover episode.
Yeah.
Which, as I recall, was a compilation of former episodes. Today, listeners, we have a brand new, spanking new topic to cover in voiceover and guest.
Yeah, very exciting. Who's played some iconic characters over the years.
This was exciting, right?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a voiceover nerd, as you know, so my little sort of nerd heart was aflutter.
Yes, because today's guest, Jeff Bergman, whose iconic, I guess, voice you just heard, listeners, he's joining us today. And thank you, Jamie, for kind of helping me figure out who to be a nerd about in the voiceover world. Because Jeff is certainly well known among voiceover circles, but not necessarily among the typical audience member. However, he is the star of the recently released Space Jam: A New Legacy.
Yeah, he's definitely one of these people you will have heard throughout your life, but didn't know who he was in various guises. Yeah, which is the sort of lot of a voice actor, I guess. Right.
And I think that you and I both nerded out maybe for slightly different reasons because I just grew up watching Bugs Bunny and I'm obsessed with the Looney Tunes in general, and the fact that Jeff had to or got to inherit the voices of Mel Blanc's characters when Mel Blanc died is so exciting to me. But you were saying, why were you nerding out? What were the crafty technical stuff that you got out of this?
I was really interested in his journey and, how he got to where, because he started quite a long time ago. And it was a different world and a different industry. And longevity is an important aspect of this career. It's all very well having a buzz and doing something and just being popular at one time, but to maintain that and move with the transitions and the changes in this industry is not easy and not an easy thing to do.
Just even looking at the last 2 years.
Yeah, exactly.
So many changes. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's navigated that seemingly flawlessly from my perspective, and has the various sort of ways this industry has sort of flowed and, ebbed throughout this period of time. And like you mentioned in the last couple of years, particularly LA talent working in high-profile animation gigs, everyone in LA was so used to I'll just go into the studio and record the gigs in the studio. There are plenty of talent that had home studios, but when COVID happened, everyone that had a home studio was at a huge advantage, and everyone else was scrambling. So if there's anything to take from this, it's sort of staying current and being aware of what's going on. And
adaptable.
Adaptability, yeah.
Totally. The hustle, the career hustle, and the technical know-how hard work are very much one and the same with voiceover, or maybe just particularly with Jeff. I loved hearing the early career stories of how he basically talked his way into getting an agent. Yeah. He also tells the story of meeting Mel Blanc and sort of speaking with Mel Blanc about possibly becoming a voiceover actor, and then inheriting the roles when Mel passed away. Jeff has voiced Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Elmer Fudd, Sylvester, Yosemite Sam, Fred Flintstone, Yogi Bear, there's all kinds of non-Looney Tunes characters. Like, chances are if you've turned on a cartoon show in the last couple decades, you've heard Jeff's voice. It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
And I can't believe we were treated to a rendition of What's Opera Doc featuring both Bugs and Elmer.
If we ever do a best of this podcast, that's going to be included in it for sure.
Completely. And that actually is such a good reminder. Like, you just reminded me that these voiceover episodes that it's a recurring series. Every once in a while we're checking in and doing a deep dive on voiceovers. They work spectacularly on a podcast. To talk to somebody whose voice is that amazing. He just flipped it on and off. At one point he becomes Donald Trump in this interview.
Well, actually, that's quite a strong characteristic for a lot of animation voice actors, is because they get thrown things, very last minute. Other genres, you kind of know what the deal is when you go into the studio, when you start the session. Whereas animation, they can change things on the fly. They can throw new characters at you. And, it tends to be people who are very quick-witted and good on their feet who do this kind of work. And they do the voice first, so they have that flexibility.
Voice first, and Jeff also mentioned that in this new Space Jam movie, he worked with LeBron James, the other star of the movie, 0 times.
Yeah.
That's another aspect of voiceover, is it is often just you alone in a studio or in a home studio.
Yeah.
Are there any other voiceover industry updates that listeners should know about? Because as we've been saying, this is why we're making this a recurring series, because there is just so much going on.
Well, it's funny you should ask that, Jack, because I have an episode of my podcast, VO School, coming out today. And a big thing that people are talking about right now is AI or synthetic voices taking over what we do. And so one of the online marketplaces, the Voice 123, they have recently conducted a report, and actually that's coming out today as well, Thursday. And they've surveyed and they actually implemented some AI voices on their system to get real data on this. And they surveyed the clients to see, what did you think of this? So it was a real world test. So we're going to go through that report and figure out what actual voice seekers thought of that and the state of play today, because there's a lot of scaremongering about that voice actors are going to be out of work and things like that, which actually, spoiler alert, is not necessarily the thing.
Not necessarily. That's good. That's good to hear, because I do think, listeners of this podcast that are interested in voiceover, as always, go listen to VO School. And it sounds like, you guys have an exclusive on truly the latest in a pretty fascinating area of voiceover right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's coming out today, and the report is in some ways completely, not to give it all away, the results are sort of logical and obvious in some ways, and then there are a few things that I was quite surprised to learn. So it's an interesting discussion for sure.
Well, thank you, Jamie. We will have you on again soon, because I think it may be sooner than you think, listeners. We'll have another voiceover episode sooner than our last break between voiceover episodes. The voice cast of Space Jam is amazing. We really could have just gone, tons and tons of interviews with everyone in Space Jam. But Bugs was obviously that's
yeah. And Jeff's such a legend, so very happy he's on the pod.
Thank you, Jamie. Let's take a quick break and then get to this interview.
Hello, this is Jamie, the producer of the podcast, and I just want to take some time to tell you about the sister podcast to In the Envelope, which is VO School. This is a podcast that I produce and host, and it is devoted entirely to voiceover. So if you're looking to get into the voiceover industry, you should check it out. That's VO School, found on iTunes, Stitcher, all the usual places, and it's hosted by me. Each episode covers a different subject, and we go through the business, the craft, the marketing, the blood, sweat and tears that is creating a voiceover career. So check us out, the VO School podcast, available now.
Jeff Bergman is a legend in the voiceover industry, particularly when it comes to cartoon animation. The first actor to replace Mel Blanc as the voice of Bugs Bunny and other Looney Tunes characters, Jeff has also lent his voice to the Flintstones, the Jetsons, Jellystone, Despicable Me and Batman films, and Stephen Colbert's Showtime satire, Our Cartoon President. He now stars as Bugs and several other Warner Brothers cartoons in Space Jam: A New Legacy. Here is the astounding Jeff Bergman.
Hey, Jack.
Hi. Hi, good to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you, too.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to have you. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Jack. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I have so many questions for you. So on this podcast, we're all about craft and career advice, but we do, because we are Backstage. First of all, are you familiar with Backstage at all?
Of course.
Did you ever use Backstage for like casting notices?
Oh my gosh, I'm dating myself, but yes, that was the go-to paper in the like late 80s for me. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, when it was a paper,
Yes.
not even a magazine. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, that's great. Well, we really like featuring voiceover actors, especially, of course, on the podcast. And I always kind of start by asking about inspirations and early inspirations, but I always find it super fascinating for voiceover, especially impressionists. What were your earliest like inspos or people that you were copying?
Well, probably it started for me in the late 1960s when I saw Rich Little, Frank Gorshin, George Kirby. They were the impressionists of the day, and they were the Dana Carveys of that time, or the Jay Farrows. I mean, I just thought it was like watching a magician. What they did was like, whoa, it was like you just went from this voice to that voice, and how is that possible? So I mean, it was additionally exciting because when you think about it, people didn't really have televisions in their homes until the mid 50s. Most people, that is, in the United States. So television really was only in its infancy, maybe 15, 17 years that people had TV sets. So it just was that much more unbelievable. And there was no social media. So when you saw someone do 10 minutes, a comic on Ed Sullivan, and they were doing all these impressions, your head was blown. Your mind was blown by it.
Your universe is just expanding. Yeah.
Yes. So, I mean, that was my first inspiration, Rich Little. And then, of course, eventually I would get on to Mel Blanc and the voice of Bugs Bunny, and Dawes Butler and Don Messick. I mean, they were like they're like the Mount Rushmore of animated voice artists.
Right. And so then so talk to us about the school. You went to school, and at what point did you meet Mel Blanc?
I first met Mel Blanc in 1981, so that would be just it's 40 years, this year that I met him, and I was in my junior year at the University of Pittsburgh getting my undergraduate degree, and I noticed that there was he was going to be at our university giving a performance lecture, and I went, oh my gosh, Mel Blanc, the voice Bugs Bunny. So I thought, wow, let's go check that out. Never could I have imagined that I would see his performance, and he was great. He brought Bugs Bunny cartoons. They had a reception afterwards. He signed autographs for all the kids, for all the students. But I never could have imagined that I would have met him that night. And I don't know what gave me the courage to do it, because it's not necessarily my MO to knock on someone's hotel room at 10 o'clock at night. And he answered the door, and like the first words out of his mouth that I heard were just a jiffy, and I went, oh my God, that's him. That's the voice. So he opened the door. He was in his bathrobe, and he, Mr. Blanc, I saw your lecture at the University of Pittsburgh. I'm such a huge fan. Could you just give me 3 minutes of your time? And he was so gracious. I mean, he was so nice, and he invited me in. I mean, could you imagine, like,
No.
today? That would never happen today. I mean, I can't imagine that in the times we're living in. So he invited me in, and there were two of those single kind of, small diminutive beds, and we each sat on one of the beds facing each other. And he asked me about my what I was studying, and I said I really didn't want to be in college, and he gave me some great advice, which is to stay in school, and get your degree, and I did some voices for him. I did a little performance for him, and he was very sweet and encouraging, and he said, you're pretty good. So if you ever get out to LA, look me up. So that was a watershed moment, I have to say. That was a big turning point for me in my career, that meeting.
That's crazy. But you said that it was not necessarily in your nature to be so assertive and to initiate. I mean, I didn't realize you went to the hotel room and knocked on the door. It's amazing.
Yes. That's just not me to do that. That's not in my DNA to be that forward to seek out somebody, but I just. And the strange thing is, I wasn't somebody that was just like waiting to do cartoon voices in California. I didn't even think about that. That didn't even seem like that was possible to do anything like that. I just thought of myself as doing impersonations, and maybe one day I'll get in and do, voice recordings or something. But I didn't think about it from that perspective.
Right. So cartoons did not come up until later. I mean, tell us about the early career days. What happened after college with that move to LA? You did look Mel up, for one thing.
Well, I never had any other contact with him again. When I graduated, which was a couple of years later, I started to mess around in the summer of like 81, 82, 83 with cartoon voices. I don't know what made me do it, but I started to think about maybe I'll just try to get more of vocal impersonations in my repertoire, because I was going to go to New York and try to make a career there, just because I lived on the East Coast. So it seemed kind of logical that I would go to New York, because I'm from Philadelphia originally. So, so I got an agent. I got into the William Morris agency. And that was the beginning of the start of my career. But it was almost as though the thing with Mel Blanc had just taken a back seat. And then if you take 8 years from when I met him in 1981, now we're at 1989, and he had passed away, oddly enough, on my birthday. Right. And 2 weeks later, they were casting for Tiny Toons, Steven Spielberg's Tiny Toon Adventures. And I started to cast for those roles, and I was cast as Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd and Daffy Duck and Foghorn Leghorn and Sylvester, just one audition after the other. And that was really the beginning of it in 1989. So that was the start of it, but I never actually met him again.
How interesting. I didn't realize that. So it really was sort of almost meant to be, and still very much tied to Mel and his life. I mean, you took over right after he died, and it was on your birthday, and this is also like full circle, or this is like where everything was leading, it seems like.
I guess so, and I had no idea. You don't think about anything like that. You just kind of put one foot in front of the other, hope for the best. But it really did take a back seat. It wasn't something I thought consciously about, but yet I was interested, and I was just kind of working on those voices, and I don't know what compelled me to do it, other than the fact that when I met him, I was just kind of in awe. Because I had seen him many times on the Jack Benny show. I mean, he was a regular on that show. So I knew I knew him facially. A lot of people maybe wouldn't recognize him if they only knew him as Bugs Bunny.
Right. But I know there's a story with the agencies. Like, I heard that you sent in tapes for years. I mean, we love hearing about the early career days. Like, how were you making a living? And what was the comedy, what were you doing to stay afloat until this happened in 1989? Well,
okay. So in 1983, I think I was just finished my final exams, or maybe it was midterms. I had a break and I went to New York, and I thought, I'm going to try to get an agent. So I had made a tape, which I thought was, like the bee's knees. And in those days, you could actually go to a talent agency and drop your tape off.
Got it.
But they really didn't want that. There was a book called The Ross Reports. And in the Ross Reports, they had all the agencies, and they had listed all the agents: on-camera agent, voiceover agent, legit agent. And so they would tell you what they wanted you to do. In most cases, they told you, don't drop anything off. Don't send anything. Yeah. So I'd be like, well, how do you get anything to anybody? So I thought, well, maybe what I'll do is I'll dress up as a delivery boy.
Oh my gosh.
And I'll have like receipt pads, and in it will be my tape, and I'll address it to the voiceover person in the department. So that's what I did. So I came up, and in those days, the William Morris agency in New York City was in the MGM building at 55th and 6th Avenue. And I went up to the 32nd floor where they were, and I said, I have a package here for Carol Baker in the voiceover department to sign here for her to sign from Jeff Bergman. And she looked at me, the receptionist, a little suspiciously, but I committed to it. I committed to it strong, and she just, I guess, went okay. And so somehow the tape must have gotten to the agent, because about a week later, and I remember it was around the end of September, it was around the Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur holidays, I get a call, and I'm taking my exams. You have a booking on Monday for Liam Parent's Worcestershire sauce in Manhattan, blah, 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 whatever the address was. And
you had booked a gig without even hearing from them.
Right, booked a gig without meeting the agent or anything, didn't talk to anybody. So they said, please call us at blah, 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 212, blah, blah, whatever the number was. And so I called, spoke to the assistant, didn't even talk to the agent. And the assistant said that you're booked. They booked you from your tape. We had a thought that you could do it, and they needed voices. So, it's just like, I don't know, preparation meets opportunity all at once. And it just happens, timing. And so
your agency forgetting to tell you that you're a client, or
yeah, right. So they told me the address, where to go. There was the script. There was the voices that they wanted, whatever I wanted. And then when you're finished the job, come up to the William Morris agency and we'll talk. So that's how all that started. And that was crazy. It's so crazy, right? Like, I don't know if you could get into a building now because of so many different, security protocols. I don't know if that's even possible. I don't know if it was possible pre-pandemic, let alone,
exactly.
what we've all gone through. Yeah. So, but anyhow, that started everything. And so then they signed me right away across the board. And I really just wanted to do mostly commercials, but very quickly, there was something happening. Lorne Michaels, who was, obviously the creator of Saturday Night Live, left Saturday Night Live, and Dick Ebersol took over. And Lorne was developing a show on NBC called The New Show. That was the title of the show. And he was casting for it, and they were casting for all kinds of performers. It was like a variety type show. It was similar to SNL, but a little bit different. So I went, I did an audition, and typically, like they do with SNL, I did 10 minutes. Nobody laughed.
Yep.
And an hour later, I get a call. They want me. I'm booked on the show. I was 24. I was the announcer of the show. I did character voices for them.
Oh.
And I did one on-camera appearance. We only got 13 weeks. But it was like the beginning, and I think I was making, I don't know, $800 a week. I thought that was like it might as well have been $50,000 a week. That was so much money to me.
Yeah.
So, after that, I just started to get more work and book more things. And, it takes time, but it took a couple of years. And by 1985, 86, I started to work a little bit more. But I still wanted to do, the Looney Tunes voices. That was really, there was a passion in me to still want to work on those characters. And so now, fast forwarding to 1989, that's when all the auditions started to happen, and they put it out to everybody. And I made a tape for Warner Brothers. Oh. And what I did was I took existing footage of cartoons like What's Opera Doc, and in those days there was the format. There was a high fidelity format called 3/4 inch tape. On one channel was the original audio from the cartoon, and on the second channel you could put whatever audio you wanted. So obviously the cartoons on channel 1. Channel 2, I didn't have any sound effects. It was just my voice dubbed in. And I did it as best as I could do it. And I had the agents at William Morris get it to Warner Brothers, and I don't know what they thought of it. I think they liked it, but I'm not completely sure. But I do know that I had to go through all the official audition process, and then eventually, was cast in as Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd and Daffy Duck, and so forth.
That's super fascinating. The idea that is the goal of sending in a tape like that somebody could play it and close their eyes and just it's supposed to sound like the original. I would love to just ask about inheriting a voice. How much are you down to the nitty gritty recreating Mel Blanc?
Well, now when I really think about it practically, I don't think that can happen because those were recorded in the 40s and 50s. The recording, different sound, different microphones. They recorded on a Foley stage. I recorded in a very professional studio, and in the 1980s that was much more sophisticated, transistor mics. There's so many different aspects. Plus, I had no production. There was no music and effects. So, but I thought to myself, you know what? That will at least showcase, only what I can do. I'm not trying to, hide what I can do. If there's going to be differences or flaws, it's going to be all out there, and I'll just let them see everything I have. And so, yeah, I mean, I just sometimes, if you don't over strategize and overthink about it, it was the love of the joy of wanting to do it that I think propelled me, forward, but I certainly had help from, the recording engineer and to getting it, where, so it could sound, professional, as good as it could.
Sure. Well, I love that. I mean, of course, enthusiasm is certainly like an important ingredient. What are the other like physical traits or other attributes, either for your voice or for you yourself, your personality, that lends itself to voice acting? Like, what are, for someone who's maybe thinking about becoming a voice actor, what are the kinds of qualities they should have?
Well, I think it's somebody that probably is very animated in the way they express themselves in general, but somebody that perhaps maybe prefers voice to being on camera.
Okay.
So I think in my case, I definitely prefer, I tried on camera and I did some on camera, and I thought it was fun, but there was something about the connection. I think it's my connection to sound, what I hear. I'm so sensitive. I could see a movie. We could see the same movie together, and I wouldn't remember what I saw, but I would remember what I heard and how I heard it and the different layers of sound. So I think it's kind of the way you're wired. For me, that's what I can say for me,
And of course, the impressions where you are imitating a voice that already exists. Is it then like, of course, we also love hearing about the character construction process. Do you just slip in to these characters? Like, is Foghorn Leghorn, could you just slip into it right now without thinking about it? Like, how conscious is the process?
I say, good idea. And I say, nice boy, but about as sharp as a sack of wet mice. Ooh, that girl, she reminds me of the highway between Dallas and Fort Worth. No curves.
I mean, it should be fairly easy because it's what I do.
It's your job.
And
sure.
Yeah, and it's repetition,
But I teed you up for that, and you didn't even blink. You had the line ready to go too.
Well, yeah, well that helps. I mean, it certainly helps to be prepared. But I do think that it's a big part of how I view the world. I view the world through sound.
Cool.
And I think a lot of people, a lot of voice actors, I would imagine, would maybe say similar things. Yeah.
That is so interesting. Yeah, it's like it does require a certain type of person, I think, with certain tastes, even in their entertainment.
And also too, when you're talking about an impersonation, see, that's where I think it took me time to learn. Oh, I'm not really doing an impersonation of Bugs Bunny or Foghorn Leghorn or Morgan Freeman or whoever. I'm trying to capture the essence of the memory that I have, and maybe it's the memory that you have. So I'm trying to pull something, because you may have watched the Bugs Bunny cartoon on the sofa, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon or 5, or 6 o'clock in the morning when you were a kid, and I have to try to recreate that memory, whatever that is.
Yeah, which I suppose is the same for things like My Cartoon President. Is that a similar process?
I mean, Jack, we're doing a lot of tremendous things. I was very upset when they told me I couldn't be president and they kicked me out of the Oval Office. It was terrible. I was very upset and very resentful. And you know what? They wouldn't even let me take my secret Diet Coke dispenser. But that's okay. It's okay. I created the vaccine. Everything is great. The world is going to be great, all because of me.
I brought that on myself, getting himself on the podcast. It is remarkable, and of course, I'm watching you on video, and you are doing the physical mannerisms as well. Like when you are in a recording studio, how physical is your performance? Like how much of a almost outside-in approach is there?
That's a really good question, because when you're standing in front of a microphone, there's the mic, it's right here, and if you move too much off axis of the microphone, you're going to lose the sweet spot of the microphone, of the sound. So that's a tricky thing for on-camera actors that haven't done a lot of voiceover, or people that are new to voiceovers, especially in animation. I have to be animated in a space that's like right there. So, for example, if I'm doing a line like Bugs Bunny,
"It's too dark. I'm a rabbit, all right. Would you like to shoot me now or wait till I get home? Shoot him now! Shoot him now! Shoot him now!"
It's the thought. It's all internal, is what it is. There is physical gestures.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have your hands free. That's really nice if you can have your hands free, because that really helps with the expression and the emoting with characters.
But like you said, it's like the essence is an integral part of the character construction. You're attacking the essence of the character, I suppose.
You're trying to, so if I'm doing, say, Yogi Bear, I'm thinking in that moment, I have a line or two, so I'm not thinking of what the line is right now, but I'm trying to capture the essence of every cartoon that I've ever seen. Everything that has been out there as Yogi Bear, I'm trying to capture that. So when I do it, I'm recreating what would seem like, oh, I get that. Hey, boo-boo, I'm smarter than the average bear.
Oh, Yogi, if I were you, I wouldn't touch that picnic basket. You'll get in a lot of trouble with the ranger.
Yogi, if I were you, I wouldn't touch that picnic basket. Ah, Mr. Ranger, sir, you and I are like old friends, like PB&J or Lox and Bagel.
Wait, but this is amazing, because my other question is, what are the mechanics of recording a conversation between two characters? You just did 3, but are you there switching between them, or is it I'm doing one character and then I'm doing a new recording as another?
So when we were doing, say, our cartoon president, I did all of Joe Biden's lines, and then I would do all of Trump's lines. Okay. So I would always do them separately, do all the Bugs Bunny lines separately, do Elmer Fudd's lines separately, do, Daffy Duck, whoever the other characters separately, because vocal placement is really key. And most of these characters, some of them share similar vocal placement, but it's usually different, and there's a different mindset with the characters. So you want to give each of those characters, you want to have the benefit of just focusing on that, that character. There's similarities in voices anyhow. So, and sometimes it might take, because of your vocal placement, you might, you know what it's like to have a quick cold, and you don't sound like yourself real. So that happens to voice artists when they're switching voices often, that they're sort of in between voices. So it's good to stay in character if you can.
Got it. So that, of course, I should ask about Space Jam, because that's very related. Were there a lot of scenes where you're just voicing multiple characters in conversation?
Well, for Space Jam, doing Bugs Bunny for Space Jam, there was so much material that most of the sessions that we did, I was recording just all of Bugs. So, and then we would have oftentimes a separate session where I was doing Sylvester, then a separate session where I was doing Yosemite Sam.
Got it.
And then another session where I was doing Fred Flintstone, and then another one with Yogi Bear. So it was really nice. We gave such attention to detail to give each character, their time, their due.
And so, because that's this is maybe a silly question, but Space Jam, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, these 2D meets live action, how often are you working with LeBron James, for example?
Okay. You know how many times I've met LeBron James? I've never met him yet.
0? Oh my gosh.
Yes. But what's so great about it is having the director and the animation director, they're so wonderful, and the producer, all there to give you context, what's happening in the scene. So if we're looking at scene 64 and there's LeBron and Bugs and LeBron and Bugs and then maybe a couple of other characters, they give you as much context as you can. And you try different readings. It might be an intimate reading. It might be a called out reading. There's going to be different ways. And sometimes they're not exactly sure until maybe they record the other person. So maybe they have to record LeBron and they go, you know what? Let's use part of take 3 and part of take 7, or maybe let's rewrite the line, bring Jeff back in. This is a long process.
Yeah. And none of you were in the same room. It's fascinating.
No, none of us. I mean, even when they did Toy Story, I think, if I'm correct, Tom Hanks said that he had never met Tim Allen.
Right.
And it was only at, I think, maybe the premieres that they had met.
It's wild.
So that just goes to show you how really gifted and talented the directors are.
Yeah.
They really, they're holding you in their hands and really guiding you.
How many takes are there typically? Like, is there a ballpark kind of average? Because again, for editors and directors, it just sounds like if you have more than 10 or 20, that's so much. That's too much to choose from.
Well, it's like, I mean, I haven't done a tremendous amount of on camera, but it's like an on camera take. And you think about, you have a shot, so they want to get it, like maybe 3-4 different angles. And then they look at it and they go, wow, you know what, let's try it a little here or there. So they might have 3 different ways that they obviously want to get it. But then there's the extemporaneous, like, you know what, let's try it from here because this looks like it might be a better angle. So now you've got 9 or 10 takes and it's just this one moment. So that's what it was like for us. I mean, I can't even tell you how many takes we explored. And that's where that's the word I would use for the end scene. We explored different lines, different takes, different emotions. So, and it was fun, because you never really know. I mean, as the performer, you don't know what takes they're going to use.
Right. And LeBron is doing the same thing. The live action actors are doing the same thing of being told what's happening and hearing the performances, or no, they're just speaking at a
well, it depends. Sometimes the director will read the other role with you. And that can be very helpful so that there's a sort of a linear continuity in the scene. And that's really great to have that. So somebody would read LeBron's line, and if they read LeBron's line and then I respond as Bugs Bunny, wow, you're going to get a really different take. My take is going to be really different because I'm not thinking about reading his line, which I do in my mind. I read his line and then I read my line. I take a minute to do that so that I'm responsive. I'm responding to him as if he's there. I mean, that's how I work.
Yeah.
But if if they're not getting something or they want to just put you a little bit more in that space, they'll read the line. And they'll ask the performer too. Sometimes they'll ask us, would you like us to read you the other roles?
Right. And it does depend again on like your personal process, your technique, your preferences. This is really good insight into the almost bizarre challenges facing voiceover acting. But at this point, it's all you're rolling with the punches. A live action meets animated movie like this is not any different from any other job, I suppose.
Oh my gosh. It is so crazy because it's like you're an animated character, but now you're working with somebody that's going to be on screen with you that's live action. So there's a thought process that's just, I mean, sometimes I try not to think about that and just,
got it.
What is happening in this scene? Okay, this person is really kind of frantic and they're kind of crazy, and maybe I have to just do the rally call, and so that's the emotion that I have to be, and not overthink that I'm an animated character working with a live act. I mean, I think Bugs Bunny's real, so I have to make that where he's like a real character.
I sort of consider him to be the greatest comedian of his generation.
Oh, he can do anything. I mean, he can assume any role, which for me, that was always one of the most fun things, that he could be Groucho, and then he could play a grandma, he could play a sexy woman. I mean, he could be anything.
So you're voicing Bugs Bunny doing a voice.
Yes.
Wow.
And so now think about it. So now what's strange is it's like, okay, I'm doing a version of what Mel Blanc did as Bugs Bunny.
Yeah.
And now I'm doing a version of what Mel Blanc did as a woman, as Bugs Bunny as a woman. And so there's this kind of, it's really, but that's the fun of it. That's the fun of it when we get into that. And we certainly explore that in the movie too. So it's fun.
Sure. There's never a dull moment, it sounds like.
No, that's the fun of it, And what I loved about this movie so much is I just saw the first screening of the film, and I just was overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed.
Oh, great. I think it's going to be such a perfect first movie to see in the movie theater and forever kind of movie. To see
I kind of agree. I agree because it's really fun, and that I think it's something. I don't know, I think it's something we all need right now. There's just it's a really great story. I can't liken it to anything, but I will say I remember the feeling of seeing Toy Story, the original one, in the movie theater. Cool. I saw it with my sons. They were really little. And I remember seeing Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And I had never seen anything quite like that before. And that's the feeling that I experienced with Space Jam. I mean, aside from the fact that I was in it, that was a different that's a different compartment. But yeah, it was just the technology, the animation is so beautiful.
Awesome. I can't wait to see it. I haven't seen it yet. Thank you so much, Jeff. This is also good. We have to ask, as always, we're always asking about the advice. Can I ask first about vocal health tips? How do you take care of your voice? Are you drinking tea at this very moment?
At this very moment, I'm actually drinking water. Okay. Tea is great, but sometimes it can dry you out.
Okay.
So I'm kind of careful about that. As far as vocal health, I know I have a career that's close to 40 years. I have to say, people don't like it when I say this, but it's true. Rest, silence. I mean, if you know you have a 9 a.m. session the following day, don't be on the phone.
Yeah.
Rest your voice.
Yeah.
That's the greatest thing about, texting. We can do that. We can email, we can conduct our business, and you can rest your voice. It's really important to do that. I do sometimes 15 to 18 straight hours of no talking. Mm-hmm. That's the best advice I can give to somebody. Yeah.
And that's the same that you would then do that for, like, what happens when you have laryngitis or something goes wrong?
Doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. Good.
That doesn't happen. I won't let that happen. I will not. That's not acceptable.
Gotcha.
That's not acceptable. I mean, there's so many occupations where laryngitis you can do. You can do your work.
Sure.
I mean, all we could do is return, correspondence. That's all we can do. Yeah. But we don't work if we don't have our voices. So
you take that really seriously. Yeah.
You really do. And honestly, I have to say, if there's an upside to the pandemic and wearing masks, you know what? I mean, I don't know anybody that's gotten a cold.
Nope. No germs.
Yeah. So, I mean, staying really well hydrated, hydration is really important. I don't think I understood that. That's another thing I would say to voice actors, really hydrate. And I hydrate during my sessions a lot, and even now.
Yeah.
Even now. It just makes it, you every take I almost take not every take, but most takes I take a drink of water before I do a take.
Gotcha. Because
it lubricates your system.
Right. You're very much in touch with do you think of it as an instrument?
I do. I definitely think of it. I mean, I'm now to the point where, unless it's a family situation or it's an emergency, there's no talking after 10 o'clock.
Yeah. Cool.
Oh, yeah. Because think about it. If you don't talk after 10 and you're up at, say, somewhere between, 6:30 and 8:30, you've had, 14, 16, and 18 hours of silence.
Yeah.
Rest. Wow. I mean, that's just, you're powering up your it's just like powering up your iPhone. That's all it is. If you think of it that way, rest is recharge the battery.
That's really good. That's a really good routine for voiceover actors. Mm-hmm. What is the other career advice? Like what is it you tend to, I'm sure you're asked all the time by actors who want to get into maybe specifically animation, or maybe it's more impressions. What do you tend to advise?
First thing is a step that I think people skip, and that is you must love what you do. You must love it, and it takes over you. It's a passion, because that right there is your fuel of sustainability. That can sustain you through lean times, through difficult times, auditioning for 500 things and not getting one call back. That's hard, and waiting to get your SAG cards, all those things that we all want to get, and we want to get working, and people that do voice impersonations, well, they're all, I want to get on an animation show, I want to get on an animated show, and you do it, but it's you have to stay the course, and know that it could be 10, 12 years before you get there. So not to give up. And then of course, I always say if there's any way you can study with somebody that's an actor, I'm a little more. I think being in an acting class, if you can do that, that is really, I think that's the better way to do it than studying with somebody that's a voice actor that has a course. But I do think that's valuable as well. But I think studying acting first, learning how to use your voice, studying with a voice teacher, wow, and learning to sing. If someone plays the piano or they sing, this is very helpful because voice actors have to sing.
Yeah.
I have to sing all the time.
Yeah. You had to sing for What's Opera Doc, that very first tape.
Oh my gosh, I did. And it was really hard. And there's a melody and there's a harmony there. So you have to know how to pick that out. And so that's really important. I mean, I think that's probably something that I've noticed a lot of voice actors, they have a lot of experience in improv, they have a lot of acting experience and stand-up and theater experience, but not as much singing, I've noticed. So I learned to play an instrument when I was 40, and I was very passionate about it, and it opened up a lot of avenues, for ear training for me.
Thank you so much, Jeff. This was so great. Do you have any other parting words of wisdom?
Well, I would just say that anybody that wants to have a career in voiceover or a career in animation or doing book tapes or industrials, whatever it is, if you love it and you're passionate about it, keep recording yourself, listen to everything that inspires you and anyone that inspires you. Keep at it, don't stop, and you'll get there. You'll get there.
How perfect. That's such a perfect summary of everything you just said. I also think the point about don't just take one type of class, take voice lessons, singing, acting, improv, all of it applies to voiceover, especially.
It really does. Yeah, it's all performance. Absolutely. Yeah. And you're just getting really more in touch with your body by integrating all those different disciplines.
Right. We also ask, what is one performance that you think every actor should see and why? And maybe in your case, is there like a gold standard voice role that still inspires you or that you think would really inform aspiring voiceover actors?
Well, I would say that I love the film Toy Story because what you're getting in that is you're getting really great performers that are, in many cases, they weren't voice actors. They were actors. So they came at it from that perspective, but they were also directed by people that really knew what they wanted. So I think there's like what's called as the Pixar read. I call it that. It's a very sort of Disney Pixar cinematic type of reading. And you almost can kind of hear that. So if you're going to audition for Disney films, there's like what I kind of think of as that kind of sounded like the Disney read, So your ear gets accustomed to what type of reading can be lifted off the page. So I think Up is another one that's my favorite because you have Ed Asner who plays the older gentleman and the young kid who was wonderful in that, and so you get his reads, and they were so natural and so real. I would simply say whatever you gravitate towards, whatever film you gravitate towards, that's probably an important thing. Gotcha. I think it's different I think it's really different for everyone. I really do. But I do like Toy Story because you get to hear, and I like Pixar films in general because you get to hear some of the greatest dialogue being read, and some of the greatest actors.
Yeah. And like you said, like that did sort of set the standard for Pixar, maybe set the tone, literally the tone for Pixar movies, because it was the first
Absolutely. One. I mean, Mr. Incredible, that's another film that I love, and it's so well done. It's so well acted. And again, they're not typically voice actors, but they do such a great job, the directors, with handling the cast, I mean, of course, like the Robin Williams in The Genie, I don't know how they would have directed him, because he just was, you just hit the green button and he's like, go.
Yep.
But yeah, that's another great performance, But I think anything that you gravitate towards is probably something that you're already inspired by and interested in, and you might even be led in that direction.
Yeah.
I'm never surprised when I see an actor do a voice or impersonation, because they've connected to that in some way. And so, yeah, when people often say, well, what did you watch? What do you watch? Is there a secret? The secret is whatever it is that gets you, that you're connected to. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Listen to that. Listen to your gut.
Your inner voice.
Inner voice. There you go.
Exactly.
Wonderful. Well, gosh, Jess, thank you so much. This was so fun. I can't wait to see Space Jam. And it's such an honor to speak to a Bugs Bunny.
Thank you, Jack. And
so, all right then. I'll see you at the movies, Doc. Bye.
And now it's time to hear from Christine McKenna-Tirella, our Backstage casting insider. I will let her take it away.
Hey folks, Christine McKenna-Tirella here. I love this episode this week, mostly because I love the celebrities we get on, but I love the long lifers in acting, right? And Jeff Bergman, most people don't know his name, but his work is literally the most iconic cartoon voices of all time. I mean, I was really geeking out. I know Jack was too. There's so many valuable lessons in this week's episode about having a long career in the business, and Jeff is so generous in sharing that information with us. My favorites, my takeaways, were staying on course, right? Don't give up, because this is a long road as an actor and you don't know when your break's gonna come. Study with people you admire if you can. Learn to use your voice, especially if you want to do character work. And of course, that means studying about, techniques of voice and all of that type of stuff. And learn new skills that may not directly be used in your career, but will help you and your instrument. For him, it's singing and learning to play an actual instrument later in life. I think the most interesting takeaway for me was leaning into what you love. Jeff had a natural love for character voice work, and even though Bugs and Daffy Duck and Elmer, they already had voice actors playing them when he was growing up, but he studied them anyway because it was fun, it was his passion. And I encourage actors to make a list of dream roles, even if someone is already playing them, right? That's why you know them, they're already in the universe. Do mini character studies of each role you'd like to play. How do they walk, talk, dress, interact with others and the world? And of course, what is their voice? What are their mannerisms, If it's an ongoing theater project or a long-running cartoon, as in Jeff's case, you never know where that type of work could lead you. And if nothing more, it's a really fun exercise for you to do as an actor. On to the casting calls for this week. I have some regional highlights to give to you because things are starting to come back in person. So casting a construction digital video. In the video, there is a few scripted lines, but if you have experience as a craftsperson or a plasterer, that is a plus. To note that in the submission, you have to be able to self-report to Charlotte, North Carolina. So it is for locals of that area. If you are local to Pasadena, California, there is a corporate award show seeking a host for a virtual programming. They're shooting in Pasadena for what will be a virtual production, but it is for 2 days in the week of mid-August at a rate of $1,000 per day. And I find this exciting because it means that the world is getting back to normal after a long 18 months, but our cruise line auditions are back. We have a variety of cruise lines that are currently casting with us, but I wanted to highlight that the Disney Wish are casting performers online to be part of Disney history. Submit your auditions to be part of the inaugural cast of Disney Cruise Line's brand new luxury cruise line, the Disney Wish. So take a look at that if you want to be part of the highest caliber entertainment at sea, according to Disney. Take a look on the site. All details are there for the projects I've mentioned today. And as always, we have hundreds of casting calls for every type of actor in every region on the site. So head over to Backstage.com to check those out. That's all from me for now. Break a leg in your upcoming auditions and have a beautiful week.
In the Envelope is recorded at Lotus Productions and Hyperbolic Audio in New York City, and Soundbox LA, Mark Rouse Studios, and Buzzies in Los Angeles. Thanks as always to our producer extraordinaire, Jamie Muffett, and to the team at Backstage, Samantha Sherlock, Mark Stinson, Caitlin Watkins, and of course, Kasey Howe. Visit Backstage.com, and don't forget, you can subscribe to Backstage by using the code ENVELOPE at checkout for a free trial. That's right, 100% free. For more exclusive content, join us on Facebook and Twitter at In the Envelope, and subscribe, share, and leave a comment. Who would you like us to interview next? Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time for another glimpse in the envelope.
Return, my love. I want you always beside me.
Return, my love.
I want you always near me.
A love like ours meant to be.
Maybe you and me return.
There's a little bit of it right there.